Hello, it's Friday, January the 1st in the year 2021. We made it through another year. Absolutely amazing. Welcome to YouTube video 118 in this series exposing the Jesuit Vatican shadow empire as the true cause of all revolutions, genocide, and war for the last 500 years, and the one and only candidate for the fourth beast system described in the prophetic books of Daniel and Revelation. Aside from war, genocide, civil unrest, revolution of every kind, the Jesuits also create the narratives in the media, the mainstream media, which they control for the purpose of controlling what people think and believe. This is a huge part of why the world is where it is at the moment, people. It's because people's minds have been controlled. It's been a battle for the mind for the last at least 100 years. And it appears that the Jesuits have succeeded in essentially brainwashing the minds of the peoples of the world. And that is why people are just following the mainstream narrative. They have an inability to think critically and look beyond what is currently happening around them. The Jesuits have been doing this for as long as they have controlled education and newspapers, which happened centuries ago. That's right, people. The Jesuits have had their fingers on the media of every shape and form for centuries. It is in the 20th century that they were able, through their Masonic corporations, to take control of all media sources, including the internet. Basically, we are all picking our way through Jesuit fabricated media news stories that have been presented in a manner to achieve greater power and control over the minds of the masses. The flat earth narrative that emerged in the late 2000s was also Jesuit contrived, I believe, for a very specific purpose. They initiated the presentation of this truth onto social media platforms, which had only started years prior to this. Remember, Facebook, I think, started in 2004. YouTube started in 2005. Twitter started a little bit later. So we had an explosion of media platforms in the mid to late 2000s. And the Jesuits quickly capitalized on this new social media platform to take control of the narratives that people were engaging with. Very important to understand this. What has been happening on social media platforms is not serendipitous. If you believe this, then I'm sorry, but you're naive. Communication channels have been controlled since the beginning of the 20th century in ever increasing measure, decade on decade, and totally controlled now by the Jesuits. They allow onto social media platforms what they want. They censor at will, and there's nothing anybody can do about it except to pick their way through it. It's like a minefield of information, a veritable flood or avalanche of narratives that most of which are false. And unfortunately, most people have embraced these false narratives and cannot see the truth about what is really happening in the world today. It's sad, but it's a fact. So the Jesuits initiated the presentation of this truth, this flat earth truth. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to revisit this flat earth narrative, which exploded onto the internet in the early 2010s. So they brought this truth onto social media platforms in order to later discredit it. That was the purpose, and destroy people's faith in it. They are that confident that they can control human psychology by taking the risk of revealing a very great truth, and the motionless earth with its foundations is absolutely true according to the Bible. Here's a very important thought to consider, which is now taken as fact by the secular and religious mainstream. According to NASA, which is a Jesuit-controlled space aeronautical agency, it's Jesuit-controlled, it's Vatican-controlled. According to NASA, we live on a spinning ball that rotates at near 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, excuse me, while spinning through space around a fiery ball allegedly at 67,000 miles per hour. The sun then hurtling at 500,000, this is 500,000 miles per hour around the Milky Way. These are speeds which are beyond our comprehension. And the entire galaxy hurtling through the universe at 670 million miles per hour. Think about that for a minute. These four contradictory motions would make star trail time lapses all show irregular curved lines. If Earth were a spinning ball revolving around a sun, it would actually be impossible for star trail photos to show perfect circles even at the North Pole. Now, this is a very, very and fundamental fact that people who believe in a spinning ball Earth just ignore. They totally ignore it. Don't even want to look at it. Don't even want to discuss it. We'll come up with all kinds of strange explanations to explain this essential fact away. There is no motion on the Earth. None. Nobody feels these millions of miles of spinning speeds on the flat Earth. Nothing. It's impossible. It's scientifically, physically impossible. And yet, people who believe in the NASA spinning ball Earth model will deny it vehemently because they want to believe in a spinning ball Earth hurtling through an infinite universe with no God. That's the reason. Think carefully about the sheer absurdity of this claim being made as science fact with absolutely no concrete proof. There is no concrete proof. The speeds at which the Earth is spinning would render life on Earth impossible. It would rip the atmosphere right off that spinning ball. In fact, no movement has ever been detected by any human inquiry, particularly in the now famous experiment performed between April and July 1887 by American physicists Albert A. Michelson and Edward W. Morley at what is now Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, and published in November of the same year. These are reputable scientists. Another famous experiment, inappropriately called Airy's failure, was a test conducted by astronomer Royal Sir George Biddell Airy in 1871, which wasn't a failure at all, as it actually proved no motion of the Earth relative to the stars. Now, these two experiments are ridiculed, debunked by NASA, or attempts are made to debunk it, but in fact, they can't be debunked because they were successful experiments and proved that the Earth does not move. It's motionless. It sits still. So, what happened to the flat Earth plane debate that raged on the internet for about 7 years before sliding into relative obscurity? YouTube activity seemed to peak between 2015 and 16. I will use the term flat to denote the flat earth as opposed to a ball earth in this video in order to avoid confusion. Not because it is 100% correct, but because it is the opposite to curved or spherical. My own interest was piqued sometime in early 2013, and I followed developments on YouTube for a number of years. The Jesuits had their science actors like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Lawrence Krauss, Bill Nye, and Michio Kaku popping up everywhere to debunk flat earth claims. It was an incredible time. Then I noticed that small independent channels were being censored and big flat earth channels were essentially left alone. That was a big red flag for me. I realized that something was going on here that was not immediately apparent, but it was definitely, there was something strange going on here. The narrative was being controlled and manipulated into a certain direction. Eric Dubé, Mark Sargent, Patricia Steer, ODD TV, and a strange guy named Matt Powerland, or aka Matthew Boylan, the comedian, were prominent spokespeople for many years. And I think that whether willingly or not, or out of ignorance, they were working for the Jesuits. They were steering the flat earth narrative. There were many other channels that emerged either attempting to prove the flat earth or ultimately to disprove it. It was a crazy time of frenzied activity on social media. What happened to this vibrant discourse online? What happened to it? Having checked recently, the flat earth discourse, although still there, appears to increasingly be under fire by a wave of satirical videos aimed at lampooning or discrediting facts supporting the validity of flat earth. And that was the Jesuits' intention years ago, 10 years ago or more. I believe that was the long-term purpose for the Jesuits, to make flat earth truth a mockery and thus further erode faith in God's word. Guess what? The main proponents of flat earth 5 years ago are still are, and none of them that I know believe in God or take a biblical stance for creation. Effectively, flat earth without God. Now that's the fingerprint of the Jesuits. I believe they were co-opted. These people were co-opted right from the beginning, but who knew who anybody really was in the midst of the online action? It's hard to discern the truth about people's actions and motivations when there's a lot of activity going on. And in fact, some of the actors may be unwitting or unknowingly progressing the Jesuits' agenda. And this is very important to understand. I really didn't want to revisit this topic again, but I was provoked by the absolute lies and propaganda in a recent CNN article titled "The Year 2020 in Space Discoveries," published on December the 24th this year. I felt compelled to speak out against it, even though I had previously addressed flat Earth and space to some degree in my videos number 12 and 16A and B. In the CNN, or Catholic News Network, article, the Jesuits are mocking the world and boasting about the fake accomplishments of their NASA space psychological operation against mankind. They are mocking humanity, the stupidity of humanity to believe in all these space fictions. That was the purpose for this trillion-dollar space industry to be set up in the first place back in the 50s. First of all, it's important to establish that the Bible states that the earth does not move, and it says this more than 130 times. This is more important than the shape of the earth, although there is little doubt that it is a topographically irregular plane. This alone should be enough to stop Christians dead in their tracks and rethink the pseudoscience lies that they've been taught since childhood. And that includes me. I came to this truth late. But here I am. I'm defending the biblical stance for an immovable, motionless, flat earth plane. Flat earth cosmos. Geocentric flat earth cosmos. The earth doesn't move, but the sun and moon and stars do. The question is, do you believe the testimony of God, the Bible, or the testimony of the world, NASA? You can't believe both. You must choose one or the other and make a stand. You must resolve this issue to believe the Word of God or to believe the word of the world, Satan's Luciferian science program. You must choose. Here are 3 scriptures that state the obvious. Psalm 104 and verse 5 couldn't be any clearer when it says, "Who laid the foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever?" And Psalm 93 and verse 1 declares, "You have fixed the earth immovable and firm." Finally, in Joshua chapter 10 and verse 13, "And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day." 3 scriptures that testify to the fact the earth does not move. That the heavenly bodies move, not the earth. I want to state here that aside from the scripture stating that the earth does not move, no one knows what the earth actually looks like in its entirety. No one. No one. We do not have a complete picture of the earth from altitude, or such a high altitude, as to show it in all its fullness, regardless of the fraudulent blue marble paintings, painted images, or should I say digital paintings, created by NASA over the decades. And they're all different. None of them look the same. It's diabolical. It's a diabolical hoax. The earth is in fact a geographically irregular plane, not flat. Keeping this in mind, here are 10 important, irrefutable reasons why the pagan, sun god worshipping, Luciferian, heliocentric ball earth worldview is false. Number 1, first of all, as I've stated, the earth doesn't move because the Bible, God's word, says so many times. If you're a Christian, that should be enough. But apparently it's not. If you don't believe the testimony of the Creator, then your worldview is automatically wrong. And thus you are subject to many illogical fallacies. And this is where many Christians have come unstuck. They have chosen to believe the world, the voice of the world, rather than the voice of God. A motionless earth absolutely negates the Luciferian Roman Catholic heliocentric cosmos. Motionless means the earth is at the center of God's creation and attention, and everything else revolves around it. Motionless negates the false concept of deep space immediately because of the firmament dome that prevents anything or anyone from leaving this enclosed world or ecosystem. The claim by the Jesuit-controlled world space program that rockets have gone out into space is a malicious lie and deception. Excuse me. The deep space fiction was created to negate the existence of God and supplant it with belief in an evolutionary genesis and thus destroy faith in the God of the Bible. Number 2. For 5,500 years, the ancients understood the world was a motionless plane until the 16th century when the Jesuits took control of education in Europe and began to teach heliocentrism as fact in their schools. To make the claim that the ancients were ignorant and uneducated is arrogant not based on facts and just plain foolishness. These same people use technologies to build and create that which we still cannot match today. They knew things we don't. So they weren't backward like many people want to believe. They weren't backward and ignorant. Far from it. Amazingly, they retained the true knowledge of the cosmos, although they relinquished truth about the one true God. Greek heliocentric ideas originating with Eratosthenes and Pythagoras, the sorcerer, and he was a sorcerer, began filtering into Roman Catholic scholastic writing sometime during the 11th and 12th centuries. And Thomas Aquinas was a notable advocate, but for the most part, people in most parts of the world believed in a motionless, flat earth cosmos. So that this ball earth paradigm comes out of the Greek classical tradition. The same as evolution. The ideas of evolution originate in Greek thought. So ball earths, evolution, this has its origin in Greek thinking. But prior to that, we have no evidence whatsoever that the ancients believed in a ball earth. And in fact, we have diagrams and inscriptions, engravings from many cultures around the world showing an enclosed, dome-like, flat earth structure. That was the cosmos that people believed in from the beginning. So number 3, there is no curve to the Earth's surface. This is a perceptual problem based on the vanishing point and the limits of human vision. Objects appear to disappear over a horizon as they move away, but binoculars or a zoom lens will quickly bring it back into view. And anybody can demonstrate this. You can do this yourself and test it yourself. This would not be possible if the object was truly beyond a line of curvature. Also, the amounts of curvature or drop required for the globe view is astronomical and refuted by engineers and architects who state that they make no allowance for curvature of any kind when they are designing tunnels, bridges, canals, and buildings. Neither are buildings seen from a considerable distance to be leaning away or tilting with a curve. They always sit flat, no matter how far away they are. Number 4, airplanes always climb and descend from a flat cruising altitude. Pilots are on record as stating that they never adjust the nose of the plane at regular intervals to allow for curvature. Never. Aircraft do not continue to climb and fly off into space, but sit on autopilot for trips that extend on a level across the flat Earth's surface for thousands of kilometers. If the Earth was in fact moving at around 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, then planes would only have to take off and wait for their destination to arrive beneath them in record time. Remember, the Earth is spinning at the equator at 1,000 miles per hour. A plane would not have to wait very long after taking off to arrive at its destination with the spinning Earth underneath it. And this is just ridiculous. This is not what we experience when we take a long plane trip. If planes were flying against the Earth's moving direction, they would never arrive because they would always be flying slower than the speed of the Earth. Remember, the average top speed of a commercial jet airliner is around between 500 and 600 miles per hour. So it's flying slower than the speed of the Earth at the equator. Landing a plane would be next to impossible because the Earth would be constantly moving, so lining up with a shifting runway would be extremely hazardous, almost impossible to do. Airplane routes always take the most direct line between destinations, and the stopovers are always on that straight line. This is only possible on a flat plane. And if you line up a flat Earth map with plane itineraries, you'll see that the lines, they always travel in a straight line, not in a curve around a spherical ball Earth. Pilots have admitted this, yet the globe lie is perpetuated to keep the deep space myth alive. It's necessary. They have to keep people believing this nonsense in order to keep deep space myth alive. Number 5, water always finds its level when it runs from a high point to a low point. Always. Water never ever curves or goes uphill. Never. It always lies flat aside from wave motion on the surface caused primarily by wind. Oceans with trillions of gallons of water simply can't cling to a sphere. Citing gravity as the force that makes it possible is absurd. Trillions of tons of water cling to the ball, yet birds are not affected by this massive tugging force and fly effortlessly on the wind. Really? What a contradiction of terms. Absolute nonsense. Number 6, no one knows what the Earth actually looks like because no one has ever ascended high enough to see Earth in its entirety from edge to edge. What high altitude balloon pictures we have show a flat horizon that always rises to eye level. Always. No one has ever been into space. Now the pictures that you see that appear to be curved, these are taken with a GoPro lens, fisheye lens. And that is not the reality. When you use a normal camera, the normal lens, you never get a curved Earth. Never. You always get a flat horizon. Deep space is a very complex fiction created by NASA, by the Luciferians who run NASA, most of whom were German Nazis. That's a fact. Also in the Russian Space Agency was created using German Nazi scientists. And that should tell you enough about what these people believe and what they're trying to do. So NASA is a Jesuit Vatican propaganda agency using diving pools, huge diving pools, green screens, real rocket launches, and special computer effects to create or simulate space travel or space trips, or rocket launches into space. If a rocket had ever been into space, then we would have thousands of real-time pictures and video of Earth, but we don't. The first rocket put into space by the Russians supposedly launched a Sputnik satellite on October the 4th, 1957. Where are the pictures? Even Hubble, launched in April 24th, 1990, has never ever taken a live video stream of Earth. Why? What's so difficult about turning Hubble around and facing it to Earth? No way. Never been done. Why? Well, because it's not in space, that's why. It's mounted in the back of a Boeing 747 and takes pictures of nothing. All Hubble pictures of the universe are created by NASA artists using Photoshop-style graphics software. Pretty paintings, but not real. Number 7, Tycho Brahe famously argued against the heliocentric theory in his time, positing that if the Earth revolved around the Sun, the change in relative position of the stars after 6 months' orbital motion could not fail to be seen. He argued that the stars should seem to separate as we approach and come together as we recede. In actual fact, however, after 190 million miles of supposed orbit around the Sun, not a single inch of parallax can be detected in the stars, proving we have not moved at all. Check it out. Number 8, if Earth were a spinning ball heated by a sun 93 million miles away, it would be impossible to have simultaneously sweltering summers in Africa, while just a few thousand miles away, bone-chilling, frozen Arctic-Antarctic winters experiencing little to no heat from the sun whatsoever. If the heat from the sun traveled 93 million miles to the Sahara Desert, it is absurd to assert that another 4,000 miles further to Antarctica would completely negate such sweltering heat resulting in such drastic differences? Use your common sense, people. Think about it. I'm just pointing out 10 points here. 10 very valid points about why the Earth does not move and how you can prove that. And there's many, many points. Number 9, viewed from a ball Earth, Polaris, situated directly over the North Pole, should not be visible anywhere in the Southern Hemisphere. For Polaris to be seen from the Southern Hemisphere of a globular Earth, the observer would have to be somehow looking through the globe from underneath, and miles of land and sea would have to be transparent. Polaris can be seen, however, up to over 20 degrees south latitude. Number 10. Ring magnets of the kind found in loudspeakers have a central north pole with the opposite south pole actually being all points along the outer circumference. This perfectly demonstrates the magnetism of our flat Earth. Whereas the alleged source of magnetism in the ball Earth model is emitted from a hypothetical molten magnetic core in the center of the ball, which they claim conveniently causes both poles to constantly move, thus evading independent verification at their two ceremonial poles. In reality, the deepest drilling operation in history, the Russian Kola Ultra Deep, managed to get only 8 miles down. So the entire ball Earth model taught in schools showing a crust, outer mantle, inner mantle, outer core, and inner core layers are all pure speculation, as we have never penetrated through beyond the crust. It's all fiction. Science books are mostly fiction. Fiction, people. When it comes to the physical sciences, it's mostly fiction. When it comes to biology, this is mostly true. But the physical sciences, it is mostly fiction. Especially what they are promoting about the Earth and deep space paradigm or pattern. My question is, why would the Jesuits go to such great trouble and expense for centuries to create and maintain the deep space spinning ball Earth fiction if they didn't intend to use it to achieve some nefarious purpose? Well, they have one, and we are watching that purpose roll out before our very eyes, a world that worships the God of science and technology and pleasure. Science, technology, and pleasure being locked down with all freedoms, fast disappearing, and the marking or genetic manipulation of all apostate human beings being carried out worldwide. All those who want to join this system. Changing gods has never been a good move for any people. God is a jealous God. And if people refuse to acknowledge him as God, ultimately, they will be destroyed. They will be punished and destroyed. They have no reason to reject him. He's done nothing but good for them. He's created a beautiful earth on which to live and all the beautiful things to enjoy. And to reject him and to reject his lordship and kingship over his cosmos ultimately will end in destruction for those who refuse to turn away from evil and turn back to God. Here are some of the fantastic claims being made by the Jesuit-run NASA space propaganda machine. Number 1, it's the Hubble telescope's 30th anniversary, and here's what CNN has to say about it. Hubble has enabled astronomers around the world to study black holes. Black holes, really? Mysterious dark energy. Dark energy. Never been proven. Black holes, never been proven. Distant galaxies and galactic mergers. Really? They can see that far? This vital research instrument has observed, vital to deceiving the world, has observed planets outside of our solar system and where they form around stars and star formation and death. Star formation and death. and it has looked across 90% of the universe, effectively peering back in time. Really? 90%, 97% of the universe and peering back into time? It's just a fantastic story, but there's no proof for it. Hubble teams in 2020 have continued to release new images and contributed to a wealth of discoveries. Really? If you have fallen for the Hubble deception, don't be too hard on yourself. Because I fell for it too, for a while. It does seem convincing. 30 years of the Luciferian Jesuits deceiving the public using a telescope mounted into the fuselage of a NASA 747 aircraft. What can it possibly see within the confines of Earth's atmosphere? Certainly not 97% of the universe, according to the NASA worldview, and it certainly didn't see the fantastic digital images created in Photoshop. It's all part of the complex but very clever space deception. Not science, but science fiction. High-level Freemason and actor William Shatner was totally right when asked the difference between science and science fiction. He replied, "Nothing. No difference. They're the same." That's revealing, because he's an insider. Number 2, the humans in space fiction continues. CNN states that this year marked 20 years of a continuous human presence on the International Space Station. Really? Astronauts also learned more about how their bodies adapt to space. A suite of studies revealed some of the genetic changes astronauts experience during long-term spaceflight. A crew had to handle a blood clot in space. A blood clot in space? And NASA astronaut Christina Koch set a new spaceflight record for women. Go the women. There's the feminists in space. Commercial cargo vehicles and crew transport provided by SpaceX are allowing more experiments and astronauts to travel to and from the space station, which means that even more scientific discovery is possible on the space station in the future. Wow. Really? It's all nonsense. No human has ever been in space because there is no way to breach the firmament dome that God created to protect the flat earth plane. The Jesuits had realized that the earth was covered by a dome much earlier on because they know the Bible. They know the scriptures. They use the Bible in order to work against biblical truth to deceive the world and attain total control over all the world's people. They use it, people. They use everything against humanity. They've weaponized everything. They've even weaponized biblical truth. This is how diabolical the Jesuit military order really are. A space program was begun in 1956 in Russia to create the deep space myth to keep the theory of evolution alive. No deep space, no evolution. They're indelibly, absolutely intricately connected, both of these ideas. The USA followed suit in 1958, 2 years later, with the creation of NASA. This was all done under the pretense of a fictitious Cold War space race by fictitious ideological enemies, which the Jesuits created. This myth was created by and maintained by the Jesuits to keep the world divided and in darkness. The Americans and Russians apparently worked together in the South Pacific to test the limits of the dome by firing nuclear missiles at it in an attempt to breach it in a joint operation called Operation Fishbowl during 1962. Of course, this is a lie too, because nuclear weapons can't be detonated while airborne. They must be stationary on the ground. It's very specific to detonate a nuclear weapon. They cannot be detonated while moving and airborne. They must be situated very particular, and they must be triangulated with the sun's orbit around the flat earth plane. And this is fact, people. You can check this out. It's not a secret. Only conventional missiles were used. Nevertheless, the American and Russians have always worked together behind the scenes. Always! They're not enemies. How do you think Russia developed its technology so fast while in isolation under communism? Don't believe all the spies and stolen secrets nonsense. There has been a regular technology transfer between the USA, Russia, and China since the 1930s at least, and all facilitated by the Jesuits through their control of the CIA, FBI, Pentagon, NSA, and all the world's intelligence agencies. The Jesuits control them all. And that is documented. The ISS, or International Space Station, as well as its predecessor, Skylab, are and were situated in a deep water tank at a NASA facility where all the astronaut activity is filmed in water, underwater, to mimic what movement in a vacuum might look like. Spacesuits are just modified diving suits. Special film techniques are used to mimic what space might look like. It's all contrived using smoke and mirrors, green screens. Huge rockets are built and launched to enormous media fanfare and spectacle. It's all part of the space delusion. No astronaut is ever on those rockets. They go up, curve, and dump into the ocean out of sight. Every stage of a mission is compartmentalized. So very few people know what the other teams on the project are doing. They don't talk to each other. They're compartmentalized people. This is how they can pull this off. All astronauts are lying Freemasons sworn to secrecy. And that also is documented. None have ever been on a rocket. Ever. It's all nonsense. The astronauts that supposedly died fantastically in rocket explosions upon investigation are still alive. That's a fact. Some, like Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, were murdered on the launch pad in 1967 when a flash fire engulfed their command module during testing for the first Apollo Saturn mission because they knew too much, or one of them knew too much, and got a conscience. They were silenced. This is how they do it. They arrange accidents, suicides, to dispose of people that suddenly have become a difficulty for them. The Masonic space industry is a dangerous place to work if you know the truth about the deception and decide you want to talk about it. Number 3, CNN reports that the Moon, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter all made news with new discoveries on each planet that are intriguing researchers. I'll bet. That's what the Jesuits are experts at doing, making news. They make news. It's all made, contrived. Don't believe a word of it. They create the news, people. Nothing's happening in a boring world where everyone's just trying to get on. They make news. They create the news. They make things happen. Apparently, rockets and probes are leaving the atmosphere on a fairly regular basis and traveling through space to lights in the sky. How on earth is that possible? The moon is called a light in the Bible and is not a solid body, and so is the sun. They're lights. They are lights. Mars and Venus are also lights in the sky. Not planets, just lights. How do you land a rocket on a light? Of course, it's all a deception, because these lights are within the firmament of the Earth. They're not out in space. Proper telescopes reveal that all the planets are wobbling, constantly morphing lights, and nothing more. The NASA Mars mission has been filmed in operation on Devon Island in Canada's Arctic region. They were sprung. Red-tinted filters complete the deception. No one has ever gone to or landed on the moon or Mars or Jupiter or anywhere else. There are no satellites or probes traveling out into the universe. It's all nonsense. Just more NASA space lies to keep the deep space fiction alive. Now the Chinese and Indians are getting in on the act and sending rockets into space. Japanese also, I think. Trillions of dollars are spent every year to keep the satellite and a multitude of other space fictions alive. There's no satellites in space. Nothing can leave the Earth, people. It is a contained ecosystem, and the whole phenomenon of satellites can be explained. Nothing gets in or out. Whatever celestial phenomena is observed by the human eye is contained within the firmament covering the earth and orchestrated by God or Satan, not aliens. It's all a myth. Number 4, according to CNN, various space agencies have succeeded in landing on asteroids. Are you kidding me? Don Pettit, the astronaut, clearly stated that NASA had lost the technology to go back to the moon, so how are they now landing on the moon, Mars, and even asteroids? He said, and I quote, he'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again, unquote. In October, NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission briefly landed on the near-Earth asteroid Bennu and successfully collected a hefty sample from the asteroid surface that will be returned to Earth by 2023. 2023. It was the agency's first mission to land on an asteroid and collect a sample, and the spacecraft sent back some great images of the historic moment, I'll bet. Meanwhile, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency's Hayabusa 2 mission dropped off its sample collection capsule containing samples from the near-Earth asteroid Ryugu in December before moving on to visit more asteroids. It's visiting asteroids. Amazing. The sample is some of the first subsurface material ever collected from an asteroid. I'll bet. The samples from both asteroids could tell us more about how the solar system formed and how elements like water were delivered to Earth early in its history. Really? What a fiction. All meant to keep the deep space fiction evolution narrative alive. Number 5. Finally, CNN reported that the 2020 Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded for black hole discoveries that revealed the darkest secrets of the universe. Dark secrets. A record-breaking explosion created by a black hole 390 million light years away was discovered by astronomers. Wow. Researchers compared the biggest explosion detected in the universe to the 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption, except you could fit 15 Milky Way galaxies in a row into the crater this explosion created, or punched through a gaseous cluster in space, they said. Wow. Black holes. They can't see what's happening 390 million light years away. They can't. If you can believe this, you'll believe anything. Pure fantasy. All fiction. Add to this the discovery of a range of exoplanets and rogue planets, mysterious radio signals from space, multiple rocket launches and explosions, and boy, the NASA space cabal, because it's a criminal cabal, have kept the Jesuits' deep space psyop in the forefront of people's minds on TV and the internet during 2020. The Jesuits can't stop now. They have too much invested in this deception. Trillions of dollars. If people start to wake up and ask questions, then they've got a problem. Dumbed down, mind-controlled people are easy to control. If you're not starting to smell a rat, then you're not examining the facts in detail. There are so many inconsistencies and straight-out lies surrounding the Jesuit-controlled space programs that it is incredible that so many still believe what they hear and see on TV. Incredible. And that's how the deception is maintained, people, using TV and Hollywood filmmaking technology. People believe it because they saw it on TV. Absolutely incredible. How scientific is that? I saw it on TV, so it's true. Really? What a deception the world is under. Remember that the Vatican controls the skies and the fields of astronomy and astrophysics. Yes, they do. They have a tight fist of control on these sciences. In fact, all the sciences, all astronomical observatories worldwide are controlled by the Jesuits, by the Vatican. Yes, they are. Check it out. Coincidence? No way. It was the Vatican that promoted Copernicus' document titled Revolutionibus Orbium Celestium, or On the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres, in 1543, only 3 years after the legitimization of the Jesuits, the Jesuit military order, by Pope Paul III. Coincidence? No way. No way. It's all part of a long-range plan by the Jesuits. The Jesuits must keep a tight-fisted control of the skies of Earth, and thus the control of information related to the skies, and thus space. This is how the heliocentric space fiction is perpetuated by Rome. It's religious. It's metaphysical, religious nonsense, pagan nonsense. The Vatican controls every agency related to flight and space. Every one. Through their Masonic cabal. They even have the same vector snake tongue symbol on their logos. Try to challenge this control, and you'll be dealt with summarily by these Jesuit-run UN agencies. Science today has nothing to do with the empirical repeat, test, and observe methodology in order to prove or establish a premise as true. Knowledge today is mostly theoretical and unproven, giving birth to scientism, which is nothing more than a combination of Babylonian magic, alchemy, and metaphysics. It's all snake oil, and the Jesuits are the snake oil salesmen from the cult of the snake. That's exactly right, people. That's what they are. None of the claims made by NASA agencies in this CNN article are remotely possible or true in a motionless, flat Earth paradigm. They are outright fabrications created to deceive. There is no magical force called gravity, which is totally unproven to today. There is no space. There is no solar system with planets. There is no infinitely expanding universe. And there is no program going on in space. Nothing. It's all a fiction. The big question then for anyone to answer is, if the Earth is a plane with a protective dome covering it, then who is the builder? Who created it this way? Where there is a construct or a construction, there is a constructor. It's common sense, and that is where the rubber meets the road. A person can deny everything I've said and refuse to confront the truth of God, or they can humble themselves before God and acknowledge this great creation of His, of which humans are the pinnacle. There's only 2 responses a person can make. Finally, it is the sciences or natural philosophy that the Jesuits have used to deceive mankind. Real empirical science has mostly been replaced by theoretical science or pseudoscience based on alchemical processes for the purpose of the transformation of mankind. The satanic transformation of mankind is underway right now. These new and emerging science fields include epidemiology, virology, exometeorology, quantum biology, nutrigenomics, synthetic biology, and recombinant mimetics, among others. These so-called sciences are highly speculative or theoretical and usually run counter to natural systems put in place by God, natural principles. They seek to invoke synthetic or unnatural man-made solutions which run counter to or against God's natural order. This includes the concept of vaccines as a transformative technology which work against the robust immune system God created to protect human life. Injecting vaccine toxins subcutaneously directly into the blood is extremely dangerous, as natural defense mechanisms are bypassed, giving these toxins immediate, direct access to vital organs without remediation of any kind. Intentional? You bet. Absolutely intentional by the Jesuit science cabal. This is the intention. The Jesuits have been transforming mankind for 5 centuries through sorcery. They are sorcerers casting spells over the peoples of the world. They have transformed people through Luciferian education, religion, culture, social values, medicines, morality, and technology. They have also been transforming or terraforming the world with chemical technologies. The Jesuit goal is a return to Babel with a one-world religion and government ruled by Satan's papal Superman, Antichrist dictator. We are almost there. Once everyone has been marked with this new vaccine, then the Jesuits' Luciferian project is complete with the enslavement and ultimate destruction of mankind. This is my repeated warning, and I have said this in the last 40 videos. Do not take the COVID-19 vaccine. It is not a vaccine, but a synthetic mRNA biometric implant. It has nothing to do with protection against the virus because there is no killer virus. Viruses are not the enemy. Viruses are beneficial to the human body. The pandemic is a fiction. Taking the mark makes you the property of the beast world ruler. The synthetic mRNA is patented, whatever you like. And once it is in your body, aside from the genetic damage it will cause, you will become the property of the patent holder. The vaccine effects are irreversible. The vaccine taker will be irredeemable to God and damned for all eternity. This is stated 5 times in the book of Revelation. God is warning many times. Do not do this. This is a serious message, people. There's no coming back once you've been vaccinated or marked. There's no coming back. What have vaccines got to do with the flat earth? Both flat earth and vaccines are pseudoscience, and this is the great delusion now being sent by God to damn all those who refuse to love the truth so as to be saved, as declared in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 10 to 12. Belief and trust in the false premises of science and technology rather than faith and trust in God will result in God's temporal and eternal judgment on mankind. The great delusion is God's terrible judgment. He's using the Jesuits, who are the rulers of sin. That's what they are. If you're listening to this and you're not saved, not born again by the water and the Spirit, just as the Bible declares, then there's still time for you to repent of your sin and rebellion against God. He loves you and is waiting for you to humble yourself and turn away from your life of sin. He's waiting. Only Jesus Christ can save you. There is no other way. I'll leave a link where you can go and find out what you must do to be saved from sin and this evil world system. Thank you for listening. And I pray that God will continue to open your eyes as you search for the truth on all things, including the pseudoscience that we're surrounded by and the flat earth truth. The flat earth truth. I'll put all pertinent links in the description box below. Please share or download the Medical Freedom Alliance compilation video of doctors' warnings against the mRNA vaccine at the allegedlydave.com link below. Share, 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 people. Time is running out. Share this information with others as you're able so that many more might be awakened to the reality of this evil world system. As I have been saying in previous videos, if I should suddenly be unable to post any more videos, then I pray also that God would keep and bless you all in the perilous days that lie ahead of us. God bless you, and I hope to talk to you soon.